Well, let me welcome you to the conversation segment of the Signature Show this Sunday. And the conversation this Sunday is special in the sense that the last time we spoke with our guest, he was a chieftain of a different party. This afternoon, it appears that he's returned to base. And my guest is Chief Chekwas Okorie. Chief Chekwas Okorie is the founding father, the founder of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, from which he was elbowed out like the Arabian camel that elbows out its owner. Chief Chekwas Okorie, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Now, the last time you and I spoke was on the day you launched your book.
Yes.
The APGA question.
The Igbo question.
Igbo question. Then you were a chieftain of the APC.
Yes.
But in the course of the months that have passed, I've been reading, you returned to APGA.
Yes.
Why did you return to APGA?
Well, to start with, the introduction was very correct, that I am the founder of APGA. Just like any parent, the passion for APGA had always been there. And leaving APGA under circumstances that were beyond my control was with very heavy heart. But I couldn't stay knocking my head on the wall. It took me 8 years in various courts, 3 times to the Supreme Court, to try to save the soul of APGA so that it could live out its full potential and the vision for which it was founded and formed. When that didn't happen, I threw in the towel voluntarily along with my associates. By 8 years, it became part of our history as the longest leadership dispute anywhere in Africa, political party leadership dispute. And there must be an end to anything. So we proceeded to form the United Progressive Party. When that couldn't fly, in the sense that when INEC decided to deregister 74 political parties in one fell swoop, UPP was one of them. We were then in some dilemma. We had our, what I'll call our valedictory National Executive Committee meeting.
That's our UPP.
The UPP. And weighed the options. And we said that for all our political life, spanning our youthful years, we had been in the opposition. In any case, if you are in a political party with the aim of fighting for a group that had been marginalized, you will hardly be part of the establishment that is marginalizing your people. So we had been in opposition. There was no attraction for us to opt for the PDP, which at that time had also become an opposition party. The option, therefore, was to take a bite at the APC, which was a ruling party. While we were there, myself and most of us felt like fish out of water. We couldn't really fit into the establishment thing, because fitting into the establishment thing means that there are things you might see, you will not be able to speak out, not to be seen as anti-party person. And so we managed to cope with all of that. And somebody like me couldn't really last long in a situation where my people are not given their rightful recognition, accommodation, and relevance, which they rightly deserve or richly deserve. So my mind kept going back to APGA, going back to what APGA could have been if the Holocaust had not come to eat up the crop. So it happened, therefore, that Chief Edozie Njoku, having won his case at the Federal High Court and having also gotten the Supreme Court to correct a mistake they made in October last year, this time in his favor, the first thing himself and his members of the National Working Committee did was to come to my residence at Enugu to passionately appeal to me to forgive and forget all the injustices done to me and return to the fold and provide some kind of advice and leadership in any accommodation that they will find convenient for me. Of course, the aspect of forgiving was promptly granted because I'm a Christian and I had forgiven long before they came. But the aspect of returning to the party needed some consultation because I didn't leave the party all by myself. So it took about 2 weeks for me to reach out, and there was not a single dissenting voice amongst my associates that we should return to the party we founded, we built up. And I had always said, when many people were urging me over the years to return to APGA, that things were not going well, the party had derailed, I said it would be wrong and in fact humiliating for me to return to the house I built through the back door. It is better I see a front door widely open for me to come in, and I will gladly do so. So the Edozie Njoku approach with his leadership of the party was like opening the front door for me to enter. It was also very emotional outing, the way they came about it, singing some religious songs that touched my heart. Even if my heart was made of stone, it definitely melted. So I returned very gladly. That was how I came back to APGA.
Yeah, but Chief Okorie, this APGA crisis seems to be over-lingering. Let me say why I'm saying over-lingering. From the leadership crisis, which apparently seems to have been resolved, to now another legal contention between APGA and INEC. Can you tell me the full story? What is this legal lingering contention? Well,
APGA, the way I will see it, is not yet in legal dispute with INEC, not at the moment. But let me also clear this too. You rightly said it appears the leadership crisis have been resolved. Yes. As we speak today, and for the first time in 18 years, there is not a single leadership dispute of APGA subsisting in any court of law in Nigeria, from trial court to the Supreme Court. So it will appear that the APGA leadership crisis, as seen in various courts, have all been resolved. Now, the problem we're having right now is INEC compliance with clear pronouncements of courts of law. When I say courts of law, the Federal High Court in Abuja had resolved on a matter that started in 2019, which one was APGA, because there were two APGA, if you like, before the court. Chief Victor Oye was in court claiming leadership of APGA and had his legal representation representing the same APGA. Chief Edozie Njoku was also in the same court with his own legal representation claiming leadership of that same APGA. The court resolved which was APGA and which legal representation will he take his submissions to resolve the matter. And the court resolved, Justice A.R. Mohammed, as his name, of the Federal High Court here in Abuja resolved that the APGA that had a lawful and legitimate convention at Owerri was the real APGA, because he followed all the processes to have a convention. That's why I said lawful and legitimate. And it was that same convention that elected Chief Edozie Njoko and members of his National Working Committee. That judgment, and INEC again was a party to the suit. And that judgment was served on INEC. Of course, INEC also got its own copy of the judgment, being party to the suit. As we speak, there is no appeal lying that judgment as we speak. Now, sometime in May this year, the eagle eyes of Chief Edozie Njoko's counsel identified an error in the judgment of the Supreme Court. And that error was where the court referred to Chief Oye as the national chairman of the party and said that the suspension of Chief Oye, the national chairman of the party, was not justiciable because it was an internal affair of the party and ought not to have been canvassed in the first place. Now, the counsel to Chief Edozie Njoko found out that it was not Oye.
Oye was not on suspension.
He was not on suspension. He had no contention with the appellant. The appellant in the Supreme Court was a certain Chief Jude Okeke, who started his journey from Jigawa High Court that gave the judgment that the convention held at Owerri was lawful and Edozie was elected, but that Edozie Njoko was suspended by this Jude Okeke's faction, and therefore pronounced Jude Okeke as the acting chairman. And Nigerians will remember that the moment that judgment came out, INEC did not waste more than 24 hours to replace the name of Professor Soludo with the name of Honorable Chukwuma Umoji, who was the candidate of the Jude Okeke faction. There was trepidation everywhere, especially amongst Anambra people who had so much confidence in Professor Chukwuma Soludo. The matter went to Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal, in its wisdom, ruled that the Jigawa Court lacked territorial jurisdiction to entertain the matter in the first place, and therefore set that judgment aside. Within 48 hours of doing so, INEC promptly responded and reinstated the name of Professor Chukwuma Soludo. This same Jude Okeke proceeded to the Supreme Court to challenge what the appeal court in Kano did. It was in the judgment at the Supreme Court that this error was made. And when the mistake was identified and an application made to the justices of that panel that sat on that case, they found the application to have merit because there was nowhere Chief Oye was suspended or was even mentioned in the original suit at the trial court. So what the court did, first of all, even in that the earlier judgment, they had consolidated two suits that were pending before them on the same matter. So what the court did was to expunge the name of Chief Oye from amongst the respondents and then replaced it with the name of Chief Edozie Njoko and corrected the section, and now reads that the suspension of the national chairman of APGA, Chief Edozie Njoko, is not justiciable. Don't forget that when the earlier one that contained the mistake was delivered, Chief Oye was all over the place saying that Supreme Court had affirmed him the national chairman of the party, which means that at that level, there was nothing more anybody could do because that was the apex court of the land. So when Dozie became the beneficiary of the corrected error, the same INEC decided that they will not respond. Well, initially, Chief Oye went everywhere on television. In fact, he even had an altercation with the anchorman of the Arise television and on this matter, because he was calling Dozie Njoku names, unprintable names on television. And the man tried to tell him that whatever you are saying, you own it, because this station is not a party to this kind of maligning of a personality like that. So they had that altercation. So he said on television that he had written petition to all the security agencies that Chief Njoku had forged the judgment, and the signature of Honorable Justice Mary Ukaego Peter Odele, who presided over that panel. So that elicited some if you like, people doubting,
some anxiety.
Some doubts as to the veracity and authenticity of that corrected judgment. INEC sent its legal team, being a party to the suit, to the Supreme Court to obtain their own copy of the corrected judgment. And it was exactly what Chief Dozie had presented. Some media judicial correspondents who, because it's now a public document, yes, who in the course of some investigative journalism went and got their own copies and reported that this thing was not forged. Of course, Chief Oye said Chief Njoku will be detained within 24 hours. The man in 60 days has never been invited for anything because they looked into it and saw that the petition lacked merit.
But Chief Okorie, I have a wonder here. How come a case of this high profile and political significance in Nigeria,
yes,
would suffer this kind of frightening error? Do you have any worry? Do you have any suspicions?
Well, I will keep my suspicions to myself. I will just like to say it's a mistake. And because if it was a deliberate mistake, the people who made the mistake would have been reluctant to correct it. But being a mistake, the moment their attention was drawn to it, they knew that injustice was actually done to an innocent person, and they did not hesitate to correct it. And this judgment was duly certified by the registrar of the Supreme Court. And all the other 4 justices concurred. There were 5 in the panel, not a single dissenting opinion. So it becomes curious that INEC that complied and prides itself as having come of age that it obeys every court judgment or order, has delayed almost 60 days trying to foist a fait accompli on Chief Dozie Njoku's leadership of APGA. But the good thing is that Chief Dozie Njoku also notified INEC for all the congresses he conducted and primaries he conducted. Of course, the convention where I emerged was also widely reported, which took place here in Abuja at the Sheraton Hotel, Abuja. And so all of these things are in the public domain. And if INEC didn't monitor those congresses and primaries, it's within their right not to monitor, because The law is clear. The important thing is that they have been notified, and the notification was also acknowledged with INEC stamp. So it doesn't matter at what time they decide to obey this, the party cannot be shut out. The implication is grave.
I will come to that implication.
Okay.
Chief Okorie. Let me be kind to both APGA and INEC. Chief Okorie, can you confirm that INEC has been duly served this corrected version? Because we might be conversing and analyzing something that INEC is not even in the know, and they may be acting from point of either not knowing or ignorance. I
take it that this question is for the interest of the viewing public, because any person who has any knowledge of my experience spanning over several decades in politics and even in political leadership disputes, we know that I will not have blindly walked back to APGA without ensuring myself that where I was going back was safe, was lawful, was legitimate. That is for me. Now, I said earlier that the two courts I referred to, INEC was party to the two suits. INEC was served, and INEC in its own curiosity had gone to obtain their own copy directly from the courts, including the Supreme Court. And INEC, two departments of the political monitoring team department and the legal department had written their legal opinion and observations on everything that happened, including the judgments of the court. But why those reports remained within those departments without being submitted to the board for consideration is only for them to explain. And it becomes more worrisome when one of the commissioners, who incidentally is from Anambra State, Chief Chekwas Okorie, could openly, just after I had done a press conference, which brought out all the issues at stake in a manner that even a simple-minded person will understand it without all the legalese. And he gained wide publication all over the country, both print and electronic. That was what gingered INEC to make a response. Otherwise, I said their intention was to foist a fait accompli on Edozie Njoku leadership. Then this gentleman now said, Chekwas Okorie now said publicly, he said so to Punch, he said so to Guardian, at least those were the ones who carried his views, that if we were, the APGA obtained a judgment and INEC had been served and INEC refused to comply, that the option left for APGA would be to return to court to file a contempt charge. That was,
and I want to borrow from.
No, let me land there, please. You see, why it is unfortunate and indeed despicable that he spoke like that was that INEC is scheduled to meet tomorrow, Thursday, as we are speaking. We will meet Thursday before he spoke. Yes. And so he was more of trying to preempt the board. I thought as a commissioner of information, it would have been perhaps the one disclosing to the public what the board decision would have been, or had been. But just a few days before the meeting of the board, he had preempted the board by making this type of suggestion. And what I have experienced, because I was in court, like I said earlier, for 8 years. What I've experienced that each time APGA was in court, some officers in INEC went to the bank smiling. I have noticed that over the years, and it's not what I want to recall here, but it was quite an ugly experience. And that is what is being replayed here. And for a commission like that to suggest a legal option points to some sinister motive.
Because I want to take you from that pointing to a sinister motive. Lawyers will tell me that if a corporate citizen or individual disobeys lawful order of the court, that the plaintiff in that case has a recourse to, let me use a layman's language, report that disobedience to the court.
Yes.
Isn't Okorie's suggestion advisory? Isn't it legal? Isn't it rational?
No,
isn't it right?
That's why I say it's as preemptive as it is mischievous. Because you would have waited for the board, for which he is a member. And don't forget that this gentleman, his tenure will expire just next month. Less than a week from now, the 7th or so of July. So why is he doing this type of damage? He would have allowed the commission to meet, take a decision, and then it is on the basis of the decision that APGA will decide either to take that option or to accept it.
Let us approach something that looks more daunting, more dangerous. If this situation persists and every arrangement for the next election is concluded, and INEC keeps dealing with a faction of APGA that has now lost legitimacy by court pronouncement, what will be the fate of all the candidates that have been produced under the Edozie Njoku leadership, national leadership?
Well, that is where the legal option now comes in. For instance, if the board of the commission meets and makes a statement that shows that it is not willing to obey, that is an invitation to return to court, because that is the only option left. And it doesn't matter at what time that the court is able to resolve it. The law is very clear. You cannot shut out a political party, because here there is only one legitimate political party, APGA, that the court has resolved. There is not a single convention of the party from 2019 that Oye can claim to have lawfully elected him and his executive as officers of the party. So, but when the court, at any point the court has finished its job, the injured side must be given its time for participation. But if it is cut off from the participation, the law is also clear. Not just the candidates, the entire election will be brought down. It will be shut down, and that is the law. If a political party is excluded from participation, that political party has been excluded, and the election, it becomes not just inconclusive but a nullity. And that is what I try to draw the attention of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the National Assembly, that appropriated over 350 billion naira for INEC of taxpayers' money to conduct the election. And again, the candidates who have been wrongly nominated by somebody who is not qualified to sign their nomination forms would have suffered double jeopardy. Double jeopardy because of wrongful nomination, the other jeopardy being as a result of perhaps those who may have won their elections not having the benefit of their victories. These things are avoidable, and there is enough time to get all this done before things get out of hand.
Well, before things get out of hand, I do not like a doomsday scenario, but I think we can avoid it if we respect the law. On this program, time and time again, we have spoken about due process, respect for law. If we do that, we can avoid a number of bad things in our polity. In the past 30 minutes or so, I've been speaking with Chief Chekwas Okorie. Chief Okorie, he's been in political winter and political summer. He's endured both of them, and he seems to be coming out level-headed, strong. I think he understands this terrain. We wish him well and wish our nation well if we act well. I think Shakespeare says, all is well that ends well, isn't it? Chief Okorie, thank you very much for coming to the conversation.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, let's meet next Sunday. The conversation never ends. Good afternoon.